Internet world, this is Tom from the iScrap app. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2018. Wow, what an exciting week it's been. We hope that all of you are enjoying this nice break in the weather. For many of us in the Northeast, that super bitter cold that we had last week was very, very brutal, but having weather in the mid-30s almost seems like it's a little balmy out. You know, no Carhartts on today kind of makes for a nice, enjoyable day. So we hope that everyone's been enjoying the second week of 2018. We hope that you've been staying busy. Don't forget, we always love to hear about things that you're doing. We love when you share pictures. You can email us at info@iscrapapp.com. You can always post and tag us to any of your social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or post something on our page or send us a message through Facebook, and we'd love to get you answers as soon as and as quickly as we can. We've been very busy on our side. We've been continuing to develop some new exciting pages and redesigns that we have for the iScrap app, which are going to do a couple of cool things. We're going to help you, the scrapper, to be able to see where the markets have been over the last 30 days all the time. We're going to let you see current prices for averages over the last 30 days that we've seen reported online. So we've been working on all of these updated information and pricing pages, and hopefully we'll be getting those out to you in the next 3 months. I know it's a little bit of a tease, but these things do take time. It's not like we can go in there, paint the website like we're painting a wall and it's all of a sudden done. I certainly wouldn't say that we're Picasso, but this certainly is going to be something that takes a little time to design and paint. We have our packet with all of our different pages that we've been researching and going through and adding to and taking away from, and making sure that what we come up with is streamlined. So if you have any ideas on things that we can help you with, especially tips on making more money on scrap, different things that you've been looking to learn about, let us know and we'll certainly try to tune in and help you there. Question?
We actually already have a question
from
Richard.
Cool. Hey, what's up, Richard?
He actually, I'm not quite sure exactly what he means by this, but he says, why is scrap so cheap?
I don't know what you mean, but let's try to take the question and run. So if you have a follow-up, Richard, I'd love to hear it. Why is scrap so cheap? So I guess you have to compare it to when prices were super high. We had steel a few years ago where light iron was $300 or $400 a ton, and heavy steel was $500 or $600 a ton, and copper prices were nearing $4 a pound, and aluminum was in the 60 to 70 cent range per pound for sheet aluminum and sidings and stuff like that. So if you want to take that question and apply it to the all-time high prices, sure. Scrap is cheap, quote unquote, but I remember 15 years ago where copper prices were 50 cents a pound, and when we hit $1 a pound, we were blowing up balloons and throwing streamers in the air. So, I think that where the market is really at a very, very strong level. We've seen copper prices rebound over the last week and almost hit near 4-year highs. I know that we've been saying for a while that we've been touching 3-year highs and creating 3-year highs, but we've been hitting prices that are almost near 4-year highs. So that's a really, really positive thing, and we hope that this train just keeps rolling forward full steam ahead and we don't see any crazy changes. But I guess if you want to say why is steel prices low, I mean, we could, or why are scrap prices low, we could be pessimists and say, well, why are the gas prices so low? I mean, who the hell wants to pay $4.50 a gallon for gasoline again? I think that the nation average right now is around $2.62. So you want to have steel prices be low. That's fine. Sorry, let me shut this phone off. Never a dull moment. Steel prices may be low, quote unquote, but you want to compare them to a year and a half ago, where we saw many light iron prices online being reported 50 to 60 bucks a ton. We know some scrap yards that were taking steel for free just so people could get rid of it, because scrap yards have to have a profit on something, and it's expensive to move material and process material, and it takes 30, 60, 90 days to get paid sometimes. So hopefully that answers your question in a nutshell. Anyway, in the last week, we've seen these copper prices rebound slightly. We've seen the copper jump up 4 or 5 cents the last few days. Prices across the U.S. for copper have been reported constantly over the last week. We've seen Bear Bright reported as high as $2.83. We saw bare bright prices averaging out in the 240s range, 245, 247 per pound. Copper pipe prices about 15-20 cents less. So we've seen those copper prices be relatively stable. But one thing that we've definitely seen growing, and that's that steel market. Well, we had the comment earlier, and we've talked over the last few weeks about steel prices. Steel is very strong right now. You got to figure that light iron averages across the U.S. are 130, 140 a ton. That's 6 to 7 cents a pound over the scale for day-to-day customers. That's a really strong price. You look at some simple appliances where you can make $5-6 where they were worth $1. These are things that are all of a sudden becoming more worth people's time to take apart. Now there are certain markets that are still struggling. One of them, which we've mentioned over the last 3 or 4 months, is the insulated copper wire market. And while we talked about how we were thinking that China was going to kind of loosen up some of their policies going into 2018, start to allow some of these lower grade materials like extension cords back into the country, it's been actually the opposite of that. We've seen China almost make a statement saying, we will not be the people that take the world's trash. And it's a very strong and powerful statement, but it's been one that's really held true over the last few months. And you've seen China not only tightening up their restrictions, but turning material away, because the world was shipping so much crap to China, not literally, but more figuratively, where for many years, while China was super aggressive in the 2005 to 2012-13 range, China wanted as many commodities as they could get: plastics, metals, polymers, anything that they could get in, cardboard, paper. They wanted all of that into their country. This way they would be able to make these materials into commodities that they could grow their economy and strengthen their infrastructure with. And over the last 6 months especially, we've seen China kind of saying, you guys were shipping us stuff for such a long time, we're tired of the crap that you've been shipping, and we're going to stop it. Now, whose fault is that? Well, that's everyone's fault. If the Chinese and many other countries are asking for metals, and the U.S. and other countries or other places like Europe have these metals, and they start exporting these into different markets, well, you're going to start to get the materials into places like India and China. But after a while, there's only, the cup can only get so full. We've all seen those pictures or heard the videos or cliches where you have a cup and you put rocks in it. Is it full? The answer is yes. Then you put smaller pebbles and you prove that person wrong. Then you put sand and you prove the person wrong again. Then you fill it with water at the ass end. Well, to kind of take that analogy, China's been filling their glass with boulders and smaller pebbles and sand, and they're saying, no, we don't want to get flooded with water, we don't want to continue to take your shit, because what was happening is other countries and areas of the world weren't processing their materials as well as they should. They were sending cardboard to China, and just an example of an article I read, a lot of cardboard that was going to China, a lot of food residue on there. You think about it, food, whether it's getting to a grocery store, or think about a pizza box where you have grease and cheese and crusts and garbage left inside of the cardboard, which is a recyclable item. These things are getting put into piles at different, paper plants across the U.S. And I'll continue to say the U.S. because that's where a lot of these news stories are from. But they are being put into these piles, and they're not processed properly. The food garbage isn't being pulled out, and all these little things are making it so China's kind of giving the middle finger to a lot of people, saying, we don't want this crap anymore. We'll buy your clean processed material, but don't sell us the copper where it's 5% copper, 95% plastic. We want the stuff that we can not only process, but also make money on in a relatively fast manner. So while that's a good thing, it's also a bad thing, because for such a long time, the entire world had a place to push their low-grade materials, and now kind of waving the white flag saying, we don't want this stuff anymore, we're going to be a little more picky and choosy on things. It's made it a little tough to really export, and that's where you see a lot of these copper prices for insulated copper wire dipping, because a lot of the low-grade material that you can't strip or send to wire choppers easily is being stored up. I know people that have massive amounts of low-grade wire, and this low-grade wire, there's no good market for it right now. So it's one of those things where the copper prices are going to rise, and people are going to say, you know, why is bare bright and copper pipe prices so high in brass, the raw metals? You can see the metal, but why are prices remaining at that one static level? You know, why aren't those wire prices climbing up in comparison to the copper prices? And the reason is, if you have nowhere to ship it, then the prices are going to drop, and no one's going to be stripping extension cords or other low-grade material that's coming out of different places. Virginia, we had a couple of questions?
I actually have a question.
Sure.
Do you think with what's happening with China, do you think someone like India or another country is going to rise to the occasion and start taking stuff in, or do you think it's going to be more like people have to start changing the way that they're processing before it's getting shipped? Like, what's going to be the breaking point?
So I think it's a great question and a good idea. It's going to be a domino effect of multiple types, where we've seen one or two dominoes fall, and then there's others that are just kind of wobbling back and forth right now. I think that the Chinese are going to loosen some of their restrictions, but they're not going to do that until they see a real effort from the exporters that are shipping material to them, changing how they are preparing, shipping, processing that material. So without seeing changes on the exporting end, it's going to be a real problem to see, you know, changes on the importing price end, and until that happens, it's going to be a very tough market to really get a good hold on. It's going to take 2 or 3 months, maybe more, to see where these things are going to go. In the meantime, you know, there could be processors in the US and Europe and Canada that want to change how they're doing things and ship things differently, or keep more things, you know, local, and just say to themselves, well, we're just going to pay a cheaper price. And sorry guys, kind of crazy today. Paying a cheaper price, and by paying cheaper prices, that's going to be the only way to really go and have a better market, because it generally is more expensive to process material, lower grade wire, in the US. So when it's more expensive, that means the labor is more, you have to pay less, but people obviously don't want to pay less. They want to be able to be paid more for their material and pay more for material so they can get it in. So that's it. Question?
We have a question from Jesse.
Hey, Jesse.
He said, why are scrap starter and alternator prices not rising even though copper prices are up?
Again, so it's a great question, and that goes right alongside with what we were talking about. Electric motors, alternators, starters, sealed units / compressors, whatever you want to call them. Those are all items that are extremely difficult to process. You know, try taking an electric motor apart yourself. See how long it takes. You know, these aren't things that you can just throw into a furnace, and, you know, people just think you can just throw metals into a furnace and all this shit will burn off and melt separately. That's not how it works. Different furnaces work in different ways. You can't just throw an item that has copper, aluminum, steel, all into one pot. When that happens, you're not going to be able to melt it correctly, because there's different melting temperatures. And some of the things that will start to melt, they'll melt at different, when they melt at different temperatures, the pot will become dirty material, so you can't just throw it in. So these are things that generally have to go through shredders, and they have to be taken apart, and it's labor intensive. So you're looking at a low-grade item, might not be insulated copper wire, but a low-grade copper item, CBM we call it, copper-bearing material. Those things are tough to really take apart. You know, the reuse market for alternators and starters could be strong, but there's so many so many options for people to buy, you know, aftermarket or refurbished things nowadays, that even that market can only get so flooded. You know, take an example, go to a traditional auto wrecker that has 1,000 cars on the lot. You know, after they hit, you know, 1,000 cars, they're not just going to keep making more and more and more. They're going to scrap the old ones and, you know, say, okay, we have enough of these parts off of this brand or that model car, and they're going to keep going, and they're going to recycle, continue to move their material and go forward. So it's not always the easiest thing in the world. Flip over to another metal that we've talked about, and that's gold. Gold prices have recovered. We've seen gold go over $1,300 an ounce. Last I checked, it was around $1,317 an ounce. You take gold paired with a strong copper market, you're going to have a very strong electronic market, but with more rules and regulations coming in for the electronic recycling market, you'll see a little bit of a tightening market In 2018, more and more scrap yards or other electronic recyclers are going to have to do more due diligence on how they're buying and selling their materials. More tracking is going to need to be done. Again, for years people were selling low-grade electronics to places like China and India, where these countries don't want these low-grade electronics where it has a small copper transformer or a couple of gold pins on a board that's mainly plastic. They don't want our garbage, and unfortunately some electronics and scrap people look at as garbage even though there's some metals on it because of the amount of work it takes. You know, a good example that I mentioned briefly is different types of batteries for recycling. Everyone thinks that lithium-ion batteries have value, but there are certain lithium-ion batteries that are non-rechargeable or made in a different way that have a negative value because they do cost money to get rid of. And until people come to grips with things costing money to recycle correctly, it's going to be really, really difficult for people to be able to get rid of materials. You know, you have different items that are going to cost money to get rid of. There was a gentleman who called us the other day at our scrapyard, had 2,000 or 3,000 pounds of this one certain battery, and it was about a $4 charge to get rid of. You know, when he heard it was going to cost him between $8,000 and $12,000 to get rid of these batteries properly, he said that he would rather keep them on his shelf because, you know, at least it's not going to cost him money, and maybe the recycling process will become more efficient in the coming years where the price will go down. You know, people always think of scrap as getting money in and rarely shelling money out, but when you have certain items that are tough to recycle and the market is much smaller, you're going to have to pay to get rid of things. So it's just one of those things that we're going to have to deal with in the upcoming years. Guys, don't forget, every Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we like to do our weekly report, let you know what's going on with the scrap market, let you know what we think is going to be happening, little tidbits that might help you. One thing that we did not talk about today was the oil prices, so tune in next week and we'll talk about where we think that the gas and oil prices are going to be going and how they're going to be affecting the scrap market moving forward in 2018. This is Tom from the iScrap app, and until next week, I'll scrap you later.